this one, Candace has got a sense of humor.
Woo. Things are really heating up, and I have a lot on my mind as usual. Americans have gotten really stupid. Social media is poison to a young mind. It absolutely is. It just is. It is especially women that have been lied to as of recent. What do you have to do to counter an activist? Be a louder activist.
What do you have to say to the trans students on this campus who feel actively victimized by your presence here?
Life's tough, get a helmet.
Hello! Wow, what an honor. I love this. Woo! I love you guys. I really do. I just love you guys. I'm so grateful every year to be here. Just so grateful for Turning Point USA, obviously the organization that I began at, me and Charlie Kirk, and we've grown up in so many different ways. I have 3 kids now. He has 2. Amazing. So much to talk about. I mean, I really do think it is so special to be able to be amongst a group of young female leaders. And I think that's a great place to start, because even when you hear women leaders now, it makes me want to cringe because of the way culture has taken that term, which should be something that feels empowering, and they've made it something like basic, right? We see these terms of like, what does it actually mean to be a woman leader? Well, we hear these hashtags that go viral, like the future is female, right? I just don't know what that means. I still don't know. Apparently we love hashtags, ladies, we really do, but some of these are just making entirely no sense. Future is female, then you have another one, it's like hashtag boss, right? Usually you find someone on Instagram and she's wearing a suit, and I guess we're just supposed to be like, yes, it's aspirational to be a bossy or something. And it's not, and this is sort of the way that feminism has packaged things for us. And it's good to pause and to actually reflect and to think about how that actually began. Because it has been this system of psychological conditioning for women, and it begins as soon as you enter the school system. You start to see these things. You start to understand that feminism as a term is all around you, and it's something that you are being force-fed, whether you recognize it or not. And make no mistake, there is absolutely nothing feminine about feminism, right? There's nothing feminine about feminism. And that is the left. They take words, and when they sell it to you, it always sounds good, but they're actually doing bad. I mean, obviously, a very big example of that is when people say, oh, I'm pro-choice, and that sounds wonderful, but actually, no, an infant is not choosing whatsoever in that environment. And it's the same thing with feminism. You want to think that that's a good word. When you learn about that the first time, and they say, well, this is about equality between the sexes. And no, it's not. It is absolutely not about equality between the sexes. Actually, what feminism is it is about disturbing healthy relations between the sexes. I actually say now that if you really understand feminism and you start to follow it and you start to get deep into the history of feminism, it is actually a precursor to transgenderism, right? It's telling women to act like men, right? So feminism really did have to come first. First, you had to confuse the sexes. First, you had to go out and you had to say to women, shouldn't you be more like a man? Shouldn't you just be more like a man? And at the same time, they are rinsing the minds of men as well. And they're telling them, well, you should be more effeminate. You should cry a little more. You know, you should really get into your feelings. But no, women, you go to work. And when you think about school, I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, what is the first memory that I have when it comes to thinking about women being bosses or women in general? And I'm like, there's probably a book report. Like, you know, pick a woman who's done something amazing in history. And it probably was Amelia Earhart, right? I don't know, I feel like we all did Amelia Earhart, like, well, at least once in 3rd grade. She's amazing, she's a pilot. I think she crashed. But this is historical fact, but she's amazing. And you get this idea when you're so young and you're like 7, you're like, yeah, maybe I should be a pilot because Amelia Earhart was a pilot. And, you know, you never see someone that says, for my book report, I'm going to do like my grandma, who's raised 8 children and has stayed married for 47 years to my grandpa. And then you think about getting a little bit older, and maybe you're done with the book reports, but you're still kind of getting that conditioning, right? You're still getting that conditioning, and it moves on. Now it's all about sex ed, which is utterly a nonsense if you study the history of it. I mean, I can tell you very briefly, but it's one of these things where they just lie to get things into the classroom. And when this lie was told in the 60s, and the government was really getting ready to enter the classrooms, they went around to parents and like, well, you know, everybody's just doing it. This is what we learn, right? We started teaching sex education because everybody's just doing it. And so why not teach people so that they're educated about sex? That's a complete myth. It's a complete lie. You should definitely read Thomas Sowell's Inside the American Education System, and you learn that actually in the 60s, the majority of high school students were graduating with their virginity intact. And then the federal government came, and then they implemented sex education, and within 10 years, that completely shifted. Completely shifted. Actually, what they were trying to do was to sexualize people in the classroom, was to make it the priority of the government to, again, disturb relations between men and women, between young women and between young men, to sexualize women, to make people more perverted, to make them think that their parents were so old school and backwards. This is the dawn of the sex revolution. And that's intentional because then, of course, when you look into who is paying for the textbooks and who is actually in the classroom, you learn that Planned Parenthood is always there, which brings me to another layer of learning about history. Everything that you are told about, virtually everything that you are told about the women that they tell us are the heroes, you get out of school and you're like, my goodness, this person was a villain. How could I have thought that this person was a good individual? No greater example of that than Margaret Sanger, right? You learn about her. Oh, thank goodness for Margaret Sanger, and thank goodness for first wave feminism. And if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have Planned Parenthood. And that's kind of like, you know, the basic version of history that they give you, and they don't actually allow you to read any of her. She's got tons of writings. I mean, she wrote all the time in magazines, and she wrote papers, and she just so explicitly, actually what I appreciate about her most is she was really honest, you know? She was just sort of like, yeah, we gotta exterminate the undesirables in our society. We just can't have these people getting pregnant. We don't want them. They're growing like weeds. How do we kill them? Like, you gotta read, it's like stunning to read her stuff. She's just like out there with her ideas and, you know, proud eugenicist. This was a time in America known as the Progressive Era, where everyone was freaking out because there was such an influx of immigrants that were coming in. And they thought, okay, well, if the Nordic races start breeding, then we are going to lose the great race. In fact, the most well-published book at that time was The Passing of the Great Race, which was written by Madison Grant. And of course, these people always come out of Yale and Columbia. They have the best ideas, you know, the best ideas. They come out of Yale and Columbia, and they were like, the new science is eugenicism. In the same way that it was like COVIDism in our era, they were like, this is eugenicism, trust the experts. We have to do everything that we can. And that was the precursor to Planned Parenthood. That was the idea, is like, how can we instead propagandize people? And by the way, that was the name of one of her papers. It was called Birth Control Propaganda. And she was like, how do we go out to people and not say we want you to kill your offspring, but make it sound good? And her and Dr. Clarence Gamble, who was literally just a trust fund baby. When I say Gamble, I mean like Procter and Gamble. I'm doing this because I think of my toothpaste and toothbrush. But Procter and Gamble, and he had money to spend, and they got together and they were like, yes, let's work on birth control propaganda. Let's go to poor people and tell them it's the responsible thing to do. You know, you don't want to have offspring, and this kind of goes into the narrative of like, your body is just, what a terrible thing, your body. That is you could get pregnant. Suddenly women are at war with their own bodies. Like, it's like being a woman is something that they turned into this villainous experience. Like, oh my God, like, what, you know, you could get pregnant, right? Like, you could get pregnant. It's so much better to take these drugs that we've invented that are actually supposed to stop you from getting pregnant. And it's really stunning because I've been working on this birth control series. People don't understand how evil the industry has always been. And now that I have fast forwarded to my 30s, and I'm grateful to God that I have 3 kids, and I'm surrounded by so many women who didn't make the same decisions as me in life. And women who, of course, went on birth control because it was a responsible thing to do, or so they were told in their classrooms, and are struggling to have even one child these days. Our grandparents were like having kids on the way to work. Like, they were just like, right? I mean, like 10 kids, 12. I'm like, what? So you get 12 kids, just permanently pregnant, totally fine, working the entire time. And then you fast forward today and you have so many young women who are having to turn to the government to have children, right? And this is kind of the evil design of it all, is that they want to create the problems and then create the solution, and then call people who are speaking about the problems and digging into the history conspiracy theorists. That's their favorite term. You're a conspiracy. What do you mean? It's a conspiracy theory. Birth control is literally brain medicine. When women say that it's making them crazy, and then you have a doctor that is just completely gaslighting them. Oh, it's not your birth control. We'll give you a pill for that, for your crazy. We'll give you another pill on top of the pill to deal with your crazy. That is the pharmaceutical industrial complex that we are very much fighting today. And I think, fortunately, what they didn't expect at the end of COVID was for so many people to wake up to the evil of Big Pharma making us sick. And it goes on and on. You see, they're rewriting history. They're also being really weird. I would say feminism also is a lot of problems that don't exist. Like, they're making up problems. I think my favorite point in, I guess, just recent history was when Hillary Clinton lost the election again, the second time. Everyone was crying. Everyone was very hysterical because the media had brainwashed them all into believing that she was going to win. Everyone, it was the hashtag, another hashtag, I'm with her. Remember? What does that mean? What does it mean? It means you just should be with her because she's a her. Duh. Boss bitch or something, right? She's wearing a pantsuit. And I'm like, yeah, no, this doesn't make actually any sense. I have questions. And oh my gosh, how could you be a woman and not be voting for Hillary Clinton? And I can't forget, when Hillary Clinton lost, and the next day on the news, you should go back and revisit the news that night. Honestly, it was stunning television. So, I mean, newscasters crying, saying all sorts, like, this is it, it's over, we're all gonna die. I mean, it was like watching an apocalyptic. It was the first time that I was like, actually, I'm only gonna watch CNN for the next 24 hours because this is really, really funny. Like, it was totally the end of their world. They didn't understand how it could happen. Rachel Maddow had some sort of a mental break. And I remember they all started like telling these ridiculous stories. Like, how am I gonna look my 4-year-old in the eye and tell her that Hillary Clinton didn't win? Or like, last night I had to sit down my 3-year-old daughter and tell her that it's okay. What? Bro, have you been around a 3-year-old? Like, what are you saying? What conversations are you having with your 3-year-old daughter that, like, she thinks her whole life is over because Hillary Clinton in her pantsuit didn't make it to the White House? Like, it's just ridiculous. Ridiculous. That's the point. It's always illogical. It's always emotional, and it never makes any sense. When you pause and you actually think, none of these arguments make any sense. What are we even saying? The idea is to propagandize women. The idea is to make women constantly in the space of emotionality, creating problems that don't actually exist, and making them fearful of nature, of what is natural, of our natural instincts. I talk about how becoming a mother, it was like this amazing exhale, because I think it's really hard to be your age. I do not miss my 20s for anything. And it's funny because they bill it as like, it's going to be so great. Your 20s, you're young and wild and you're free. And I'm like, I've got student loan debt. I can't afford my rent. I have no idea what I'm doing or if I'm going to get married or have children. I was just in a long, anxious spell for my 20s. I just didn't love my 20s. And then that first step of marriage, and I was like, okay, I have a partner in life, like forever. This is amazing. I don't have to try. I don't need to like go out and try to meet. So this is amazing. And then you have kids and you realize that there is something so spiritual and there is something so divine about motherhood that you go, oh, right, God. It's God. It's all about God. And he is my maker, and he endowed women with gifts and instincts, and we just see children and we know what to do in a way that men just don't really know what to do with the baby. And they have their strengths, and you see this beautiful blending coming together, and you go, yeah, this is the math, this is the science. Like, you know, if you want me to trust the expert is God. So I'm going to put my faith in him. And it's so interesting to see how the world reacts, like, to something that is so simple and true and honest and pure. You know, a recent example, what did Harrison Butker do wrong? What? You mean this kicker gets on stage at a Catholic university and talks about how much he loves his wife and how grateful he is for everything that she does as a homemaker, and how she is the perfect yang to his yin, and how grateful he is that he has faith and that he has God, and how he puts it first, God first in his life, and the whole world just collapses. The media just could not deal with this. They were like, what are you talking about? How could you say such crazy things? But if Harrison Butker had gotten up there and been like, listen, my third divorce, my child is trans, and we're just gonna let he, her, she, they, them pick his gender and make all the decisions, right? Because government is king. They would have been like, he's a hero, he's amazing. And it was interesting to see, I was paying the most attention to how his football mates would respond. I can't believe I say mates. I'm so married to a Brit right now. I am so married to a Brit. How his football colleagues would respond to this. And it was fascinating. It was fascinating. You know, Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey get on a podcast, and they're like, you know, I don't agree with him, but you know, I it's his right to say what he wants to say. And I just thought to myself, Jason Kelsey, what do you not agree with? Specifically, what is it that he said that you don't agree with? And then people came at him and were like, hey man, like, your wife is a homemaker. Like, you that's literally what your wife does. And he totally recoiled to the phrase homemaker, right? And he wanted to explain, like, I would never say this, and I view my wife as my partner, and we are equals. Yeah, that no one said you weren't equals and she wasn't your partner. It's just called being a homemaker. And right there, you guys, right there, you can see that's how propaganda works. That's how he's brainwashed. He doesn't even know why he doesn't like the word homemaker. He has no idea what he's even fighting. Well, homemaker does not mean that you are not on equal footing with your husband. Homemaker does not mean that you are less than your husband. He is in this spell that has been fed to him over time to believe, because of feminism, right? Because of things that are explicitly anti-women, that he can't even use that term to describe his wife, or he will have somehow insulted her. And guys, the irony is thick on that one, right? Your brother is Travis Kelsey. He is married. I mean, he is dating, what is he, the 39th boyfriend of Taylor Swift, right? And you take a look at that situation, you go, okay, so Travis is sitting here across from Jason, and he's explaining to Jason that, you know, I don't agree with that. So what do you agree with, Travis? I guess his version of feminism must be Taylor Swift, right? You see that a lot. You see that a lot. You see a lot of people, the Girl Squad, the images, Hollywood sort of projecting this idea of freedom, and, you know, you can be in and out and weave in and out of relationships. And, you know, listen, I'm the same age as Taylor Swift. I'm 34 years old. We have very different lives, right? Very different lives. She is a superstar, billionaire, travels the world, has a private jet, gets to sing in sold out stadiums. And I was with her in the beginning, you know? And she was like 15. I was like, yeah, me too, you know, doing the thing in my room. It was cute. It's so relatable. 15. It got a little less relatable at 34 for me, you know. I was like, no, you're 34, okay? I was with you on the first 10 breakups, but now I have questions. It can't always be his fault. It cannot. It is impossible. It is impossible. But this is the version that we're sold. This is the idea. She is the prototype. Hollywood loves her. She's a part of a machine that they want women to believe that this is what is aspirational, you know? This, if you pretty much reject men, right? And constantly put them in your music after every bad date, and then we give you tons of money, then maybe women will follow that. Maybe they'll feel like that's the right path, like it's all about the girls club. And I'm telling you guys, that is just such a mistake. It is such a mistake. You know, I have to call this out because it's been on my mind, and, you know, my podcast isn't back until Monday, but... Thank you, guys. Thank you. When I saw that her, in the news, that her newest album dropped, like Dead Poets Society, and there was a song, and it was a headline in the Daily Mail, and it's living inside me. I gotta get off my chest. It said, she named one of the songs, Thank You, Amy, but made the letters big in the K, the I, and the M, so that Kim Kardashian knew it was about her. That is the work of an 11-year-old. That is not, I am serious, that is not what adult women at the age of 34 do. I don't go to my journal and write big letters when I'm angry at someone, okay? This is cosplaying a 15-year-old. There's a lack of development here, and I think that people don't appreciate that, because when you're younger, you go, okay, yeah, it's fun and boppy, but then when you're older, you realize this is a person that needs more substance, you know, that really needs something to write about. And so what I wish for Taylor Swift is what I wish on everybody: marriage and children and the best parts of life. I really think some of her best songwriting days are actually ahead of her, not behind her. You know, I want to see Taylor Swift as the mother. I want to see Taylor Swift able to lead women into that, to lead women into understanding that it's not about, you know, boyfriends and mean songs and cliques and girly stuff, and, you know, it's not an episode of Mean Girls. It's really about what you can build, especially when you put faith above everything else. What I wish for Taylor Swift is to return to her country roots. I wish for her to love her country and to love God. That's the guy I want to see her write about. Jesus Christ. Could you imagine? That will be my Taylor Swift era. That will be my era. You know, there's so much in the world that is wrong, and part of it is this ability for us to idolize celebrities, not to realize that they're pulling you away from the things that you should aspire to in life. I think the person who wins in all of that is Harrison Butker. I think the person who wins in all of that is Isabella Butker, and I was blessed to be able to hear him speak a couple of weeks ago at a different event. And you know what Harrison said was, you know, the more masculine I became, the more feminine my wife became. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to say things. Have faith. Have faith, and I mean that. I know that sometimes when you come to these more political events, you hear from political people, it can be so depressing. And something in me changed, I think, last year, kind of midway through the year, and I was feeling so bogged down by politics and so frustrated with the way it seemed that our country was going. And then I remembered that actually I'm a Christian, and in the end, we win. We are fighting real demons. We are fighting real demons, but in the end, we win. Pray for your enemies. Pray for them, you know, because, like I said, it is just a tremendous time in our country, and I completely know that faith seems to be moving around the world. You see people talking about it more, and I think things have become so evil that it's inevitable for people to be drawn toward goodness. You guys, the last thing that I am going to say, strangely, this is such a crazy story, but as I was headed in here, I got a frantic call from somebody. They did. They called me and they said, Candace, something very weird is happening. The Daily Wire has sent somebody secretly to record you, an intern, a PR intern, to secretly record you, to catch you in a bad moment, in a bad light. And I think that intern's name, no, to be fair, it is never the fault of a person when their employer is sending them to do something that isn't good, but I would really love it if Ariana stood up. Yeah. Okay, maybe that's a little too intimidating for you too, but apparently she got an email at 10 p.m., hopped on a plane, is pretending to be a student. And so I do just want to say to Ben Shapiro, enough. Come out into the light. Really, come on. Let's do this debate. Stop sending interns to do your dirty work. I don't bite. I'm down for the debate. Charlie Kirk says he will fly you out. He will fly you out next week to Detroit, and we can do the debates on his stage. Thank you, Turning Point USA. Let's take some questions.
Candace, we're going to start to your right.
Okay, amazing. I think the last name is Roeder, by the way. I know you're here. I had Turning Point check. All right.
Hi, Candace.
Hey.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
And it was so good to see your face. My question for you is, a lot of my friends here at Turning Point are Catholic, surprisingly, to me at least. And I find myself just being engulfed by them slowly. So I've been questioning my own denomination. So I'm curious, what was the turning point for you in your move from a Protestant denomination to more of a Catholicism?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. Especially in America, it's a great question because America is a unique country that, you go to other countries in Europe and there's just like a few, it's like, Catholic, Anglican, in America, there's just so many Protestant divisions. And so it's interesting. My husband used to always say to me, I wasn't someone that believed that you should, convert to a faith because you got married. So my husband was Catholic when we got married, and I remained Protestant because I don't, if you're going to convert, you convert because you believe something. That's my personal belief. My husband used to say all the time, to become a student of history is to become a Catholic. I didn't know what he was talking about, but it sounded pretty because he's got an English accent. And then I started getting into history. And things got really interesting for me. I started noticing some things, and I realized that America is a very young country, and because we're a very young country, some really bad people knew that they could kind of condition Christians to keep dividing and dividing and dividing amongst themselves, and to make it become sort of this my truth, my truth, my truth, we're different from here. And then the more I studied history, there were so many things that were just weird. Like I started studying it through the lens of a holy war, and it's really shocking as opposed to learning things about questions that were never answered about World War II. Like, why did we drop the bomb on Nagasaki? Well, it was dropped on a Catholic church, Obviously, we know the Nazis weren't good people, but something that was always inexplicable in the textbooks was Dresden, the firebombing of Dresden, which happened on Ash Wednesday, a tremendously faithful city. And that just kept happening over and over again, Hiroshima. And so I began restudying history and rather than pursuing textbooks that I learned in school, began buying real books. And it was very hard for me not to see, first and foremost, the Christian conspiracy full stop, realizing there's a concerted effort to remove Christ from our classrooms, to remove the topic of Christ away in general. Everything we learn about history is wrong. Like, Christians are always the bad guys in everything. We learn about the Spanish Inquisition wrong. We learn about, we don't learn, and some things we don't learn. We don't learn about, the Bolsheviks, which it was a Christian Holocaust. And so the deeper and deeper I got, and I started doing some studying with priests and overseas, and they were like, yeah, it's, Americans know very little about their own history and things that have gone on since before America became its own country. The United States of America became a country. And so it's been a journey really to the heart of the faith. And I feel, first and foremost, tremendously blessed because Protestants helped me along the way. And so I don't say that coming from a place of any judgment. Like, it's been a very humbling experience, and I want people to be interested in the way that I was interested and to want to examine more about their faith. But I'm just saying, as Christians, we have to stick together and not be judgmental and allow everybody to go on their journeys independently.
I'll work for you at some point. I really do. So.
I'm telling you, it's happened. Stranger things have happened. People have said it, and it works out. So very nice to meet you.
To your left.
To the left. Hey.
Hi.
The cowboy hat.
Oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. Thank you for coming. First of all, I would say, what advice would you give to women in the waiting season that want to have a husband and kids while waiting for God to lead them to that husband?
Well, go to church. Be shocked how many people you can meet. Get involved in church events. You know, people do a church mission. It is unbelievable. And you, especially now, I'm telling you, like, there is just, the Holy Spirit is upon us. I mean, people are just being drawn to the churches. And I always say that to people when they're like, where can you meet someone? It's not at the club. It's not at a bar. You know, are way more likely to meet someone, especially someone that aligns with your values, the more you get involved with your church. And so that would be the first thing that I would recommend anybody does. Very nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hi.
I love you. Sorry.
Aw, I love you. Don't be sorry.
So I actually did my senior research paper. It was heavily influenced by your podcast with Brianna Ivy, and I thought that was very interesting.
Thank you.
And I was just wondering what you personally think is causing the extreme uprise in transgenderism in our generation.
Yeah, so Brianna Ivy, by the way, is a young man who transitioned, still is, you know, female presenting, and reached out to come on the podcast, and I just approached it with an open heart, and it was one of the most, I think the most beautiful interview I've ever done, honestly, and I was the only one where I almost cried, very close to crying, because it was just a young man who was on TikTok, thought it was cool. His mother really thought that he was going to kill himself, and was like, we're always so judgmental. I was, at least, and so I'm happy that I approached that conversation with more heart, because I was always judgmental of the parents involved. Like, how could you allow this to happen? And, you know, Brianna did get bottom surgery, and it went horrifically wrong, and he's in pain every day, and the doctors were pretty much like, oh, well, doesn't matter. And he really made me aware that the parents are going through this thing where you have the kids that are learning this. He even was able to find a doctor on TikTok, and then was thinking that, okay, my child is going to commit suicide if I don't allow him to do this. And so it's a really compelling conversation to recognize that so much of it is really just psychological conditioning. You know, I say half jokingly, bring back cigarettes, because I think adolescence is normal and you want to rebel against your parents. But, like, you know, in the 80s they had cigarettes, and like now they're like, hey, would you like to pick your gender and, like, you know, mutilate your body? So I'm like, bring back the cigarettes, okay? I hope that answers your question. You're so welcome.
Hi, Candace.
Hello.
So my maiden name is Hannah Owens, so I think we're soul sisters.
Yes, I love that.
I've worked in conservative media, and you have lots of experience in that. I would love to know your perspective on the future of conservative media, and what advice you have for us as we filter through so much conservative news right now.
I think my perspective now, especially as a woman, I really do, God endowed us with a special intuition. You're not going to pull a fast one on women. Women know what's true, women know what's false, and it becomes even deeper once you have children. I mean, I say, like, weird things to my husband. I'll be like, I don't like that person. He's like, why? I'm like, vibe. He's like, Candace, you know, we're at the checkout at, like, Walmart. I'm like, vibe. And that's a real thing. So do not discount your intuition about people, even if you can't quite place a finger on what that is. It's meaningful. It is coming from God. And so obviously the conservative media landscape is changing rapidly. I think it's probably faced its most changes ever in maybe the last 6 months to a year. And people are starting to ask questions about what's real and what's fake, and that's good. We should always check in. And I say this too because a lot of people were upset with me for interviewing Andrew Tate. Some people were like, you know, look at his background. And let me tell you something. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I'm going to credit him because he said it way more poetic than I could possibly say it right now on stage. But he basically said that evil and goodness cuts to the heart of every individual. In politics, I have seen people that were good become evil, and I have seen people that are evil become good. So you should constantly check in to make sure that those people that were once good are still good, and the people that were evil are still evil. And so you just have to, you know, go with your spirit on that one. You're so welcome. Hi.
Howdy. In 2015, I was watching YouTube and I found a video you did of Ferguson, and it blew my mind and totally red-pilled me. And the reason why it did is because I noticed what I saw on TV and the legacy media totally did not match my experience here in Texas. There's fabulous people who live here. Exactly. And so another thing I noticed, and what I want you to comment on, is where I've seen the most cultural, racial harmony, above all, is in church. I meet so many people that are completely different from me, don't agree with me on politics, or come from a different lifestyle, but what we have in common is Jesus. Have you found this to be true, that there's a lot of unity in the church, and what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, there's just more love. You know, God is love, truth, light, the way. It's when you're amongst people who have that perspective. I even see in people's eyes, you know, when someone is just filled with Christ, you can see it in their eyes. It pours out of them. And of course, these heavily toxic topics, you know, feminism and sexism, and you're a misogynist. You can also see, like, demonism in people's eyes as well. It weighs them down to be so hateful all the time. So you're absolutely right. I see it all the time. It's one of the things that I love about living in the South, because I grew up in the New York City area in Stamford, Connecticut, and where I live now, they basically shut down on Sundays, and all of the police are out in full force to direct traffic to go to church. Like, that's where I want to live. You know, it's really beautiful, and people get along better, and all of the stereotypes that we're told about the South are complete crap.
All right, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hey.
Hi, Candace. Thank you so much for being here. So you have no idea how happy I am that you brought up Taylor Swift.
You guys like my dance?
So this whole topic of music and the conservative movement is just a huge thing for me. I think it's so impactful how music affects our culture and our society, and then, of course, eventually our political landscape as well. And you're one of the very few conservative commentators who I've heard bring up the effects that this music is having on the youth and how that's affecting America. And something I've noticed is that, you know, the conservative movement kind of turns a blind eye to how much of an impact this is really having. We can still continue to use the music. We just kind of go, yeah, you know, Christian music might be better, but there's no real alternative to those, you know, really great pop songs that are out there everyone loves. And it's just kind of, you know, not really considered super important. So what are your thoughts on how we can, as a movement, kind of bring more attention to this, how it's impacting the youth and how it's impacting America?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to start doing is talking about psychology, and there's a reason for that. There is a reason that you could not open your phone without seeing Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. That is distribution that you're looking at. That is basically, they've made a decision that this is what you're going to force feed you everywhere you go. As soon as you sign up for Instagram, they recommend you follow Taylor Swift. It's like one of the first accounts they recommend that you follow. And when she was on tour, you could just see, I mean, it was insane. It was just all that we saw all day and every day. And that is a system of brainwash that is tried and true. You know, don't ever think that this stuff is happening by accident. The people that are behind this are maniacal, they are thoughtful, they are intentional, and they are purposeful in wanting you to think a certain way. You know, they bring in cultures, and this is, you guys have seen me sharing that book on Instagram, must buy. Insane. The Manson thing, the CIA, the stuff that they were up to in terms of trying to see how you could impact people psychologically on a mass scale, right? How would people react to this or react to that? And, you know, there were entire institutes put together to see how you would react to certain things, how you would react to certain music. Another thing that I want to add here is that don't think of music as something that you just listen to. Everything that you look at and everything that you listen to is a pathway to your soul. They know that. The soul is real. The spirit is real. They are filling you with filth. When I made a conscious decision to stop listening to trash music that I used to listen to, if it comes on now, I'm like, how did I ever listen to this? Right? So you can cleanse your soul, or you can fill it with filth. And they are intent on constantly filling your eyes and your ears with filth. And so being conscious of it, talking more about psychology and talking about ways to combat the mass psychology that's taking place in the media is something that we just have to do at events like this and share it when you have your own podcast and when you talk amongst your friends. That baby is so cute. So cute. Oh, he's so sweet. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm Gabby. I just wanted to say that as I've gotten older, it's so hard to find someone to look up to. So you are just an amazing role model, and I appreciate all the work that you do.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you. You're so sweet.
I'm so nervous.
Don't be nervous. Do not be nervous around me.
I can't believe this is real. But anyway, question time. So I've heard some people, and by some people I mean Pearl Davis, attack conservative women. I saw a podcast with her, Tim Pool, and Lauren Chen, and I've heard people like her argue that conservative women aren't truly conservative just because, you know, there's other circumstances that maybe make us a little bit more masculine, whether that's, you know, having to have a career because in this economy you need to make money, or, you know, being a little bit more masculine because you don't have both parents in the home and things like that. So I think that conservative women can still be great role models for the future and not necessarily be the trad wife, the trend that's going around. So I just wanted to ask you, what are your boundaries and how do you navigate having an amazing career that I look up to so much, but also being a great mom?
So a couple of things that I want to first say. So you see this happening, and I've seen some of Pearl's stuff, and I met Pearl once in Amsterdam, and I love Lauren Chen. I really do. She's a good person behind the scenes too, and I always try to make sure people know that. When I was starting early on and she had a way bigger platform than me, she was always very kind and she's very thoughtful. Pearl is someone that I think, I kind of say I would hold a candle for her because I think a lot of the stuff she's doing is to be controversial, and she hasn't yet done like the study into the economics, like the economic argument of why women are at work. These decisions were made before your generation. I mean, this is the new economy. That's not to say that it can't be done, but I think a lot of the times she would benefit from going into a little bit of study for a year because she has the capacity to do a lot of good with her platform, and I think she should slow down and just think about what her destination is and what it is that she actually wants. So I have nothing bad to say about either of those young women, but what I would offer to you is that a lot of people look at my life and like, you get to do what you love and all of this. I am now very blessed, right? I was blessed in that when I was not married, I had a platform. I'm blessed in that now that I'm bringing my podcast back, I am designing exactly when it is that I can go in and I can record and I can be done and I get to go upstairs. Like I get to wake my kids up, you know, go do my podcast. My kids are playing outside. I get to have lunch with them and then put them down for a nap. That is not the majority of people, right? That is an exception to the rule, not the rule. So I really don't like when women who have all the help in the world are like, oh, everyone can. It's like the majority of people are not going to have that. They're going to have to make tough decisions. And the majority of young women are going to be in an environment where they have to stay in front of a computer for 9 hours a day. And then they're going to go home and they're not going to feel like they have that time with their children. So I just want to make it very realistic, you know, for people, because I don't want them to ever think that, oh, I can definitely have exactly, you know, what Candace has if I just keep doing what I love, you know. So there are other ways to do what you love and to contribute and to be able to manage your own time. So figure out what it is that you're good at. Maybe you're a writer. You can set your own time when you write. We love communication skills. You can do a podcast and do exactly what I'm doing and be like, I'm going to do this in the morning from home, be done. But I think we need to be realistic about our expectations. And it is my hope that more women listening to my podcast pursue the path of a homemaker. But I completely understanding of the economic environment that we're in right now and how difficult that is, especially with the scam of student loans and how expensive college is. Go easy on yourself. You're going to meet the right guy and you'll make those decisions together.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. It was so nice to meet you. Hi.
Hello, it's great to be here. This is my first time, one of the 64% of women here, so great to meet you. I have two things. I would love if you can sign my book.
Absolutely. Bring it up.
I will. And then another question is, my husband and I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I'm wondering any advice of how to raise strong, confident, and loving daughters.
I think mine came out that way. My daughter, there's just no getting her to do anything she doesn't want to do. I mean, she is just the ruler of the roost. She comes down the stairs and she says, Daddy, the princess is here. And then everyone just calls her the princess, you know? So I think just encouraging them in that capacity. And one of the things that I always go back to is just how wonderful my grandparents were. And with children, I think the majority of it is caught and not taught, right? And so they're watching you at all times. Don't think that they're not understanding what's happening. They're watching how you communicate with your husband. They're watching your dynamic. And at the end of the day, especially at this age, they think you're the most wonderful people in the entire world. Like when my son works out that my husband is not, in fact, Superman, it's going to be a day, because he just thinks there's just no wrong my husband can do. He's just like, as he wakes up, he's like, where's my father? And I'm like, your father, you know. It's beautiful and it's wonderful, and they're going to pay attention to you, and they're always going to model themselves like you first. You are their first and hopefully their last heroes in life. Speaking of which, I'm going to let the baby cut to the front of the line. Sorry, baby privilege. I'm sorry, I just adorable baby. So hi, how are you?
Good. This is Gabriel, by the way.
Gabriel, so sweet.
I purchased a Daily Wire subscription specifically to watch A Shot in the Dark, and I was totally supportive of you, by the way, with everything that happened. But I was so sad thinking like all the Shot in the Dark episodes are going to go away. Are you going to continue A Shot in the Dark?
I'm going to continue it, yes. Absolutely. Easily the most important work that I've done. I did it before, or when I was at the Daily Wire before by myself, and then I brought it to the Daily Wire, and so I'm just going to continue it outside of it. And where we had pre-filmed a lot of content that I was hopeful would come out, but we're just going to recreate it. And this is like Taylor's version, you know? Just re-releasing the songs, and somebody else owns the masters. So I am going to be putting that out on my own platform. We're just going to take time. I would probably say timeline, it will come out September, and we're diving into birth control, the vaccines, just so that women feel like they can argue with their doctors, and your doctors try to gaslight you about everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Gabriel.
Bye.
He's
Hi,
so
Candace.
sweet.
Bye-bye.
So sweet. Hi.
I have a very shallow question, but obviously you're beautiful and you have wonderful
You're very
style.
sweet.
So given that this is a young women's conference, what fashion advice would you give Gen Z women?
Gen Z. Okay. I personally think, and I guess I'm talking to the raw crowd because we're in the South and it's really hot, but I've always really enjoyed like a European sense of style. My style, I think, is very European. And I just want to bring back like hats and gloves and covering up with accessories. Like, I just look at pictures of my grandma and I'm like, she is so chic. So my fashion advice would like be like grandma, because she's dope. Grandmas are dope, 100%.
That is based.
Hi, Candace.
How are
I'm a
you?
huge fan. Good.
Thank you.
How are you?
Very good.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you for coming to Texas.
Thank you for having me.
Born and raised here, and we love having you here. And my question for you is, I watched one of your interviews where you were in Florida, and you talked about having this friend in college that was essentially living what seemed to be a great lifestyle, and then saw her in California, and she was actually the hostess at the hotel. And my question for you is, in that moment, when you were in your 20s talking about college and those hard moments, what kept you going, and what's the best advice you have to students that are currently attending universities like myself to continue to keep us going? What's your best piece of advice for young ladies?
The first piece of advice is to make sure you want to be at university, right? Because the American system is incredibly corrupt. Being 6 figures in debt and not knowing what the heck you want to do is not a good plan. Your guidance counselors in high school telling you that you're going to be a failure unless you go to university and plunge yourself into debt is a nonsense, right? If you have a skill set, there is an open market, people will buy it. So that's my first set of advice, is just examine whether or not you're there because you're scared you're going to be a failure, which is just programming from high school to put you onto the government system, or because you actually are like, no, this degree is meaningful and I need it to be able to do this. Like, I want to be a nurse, and so I therefore need to be at school. That would be the biggest piece of advice that I would give to women. What was the second part of your question?
And what was your main motivating force?
You know what? My haters, I think. I love my haters. I really do. They are low-key the most committed. You know, I just know, like, journalists right now are, like, watching every minute, and, like, the headline's already out there. I don't even know what it's going to say. It's going to be wild. But whatever it is, it's going to be there. But there was something about the pretentious snobbery of journalists being like, who is this girl? Like, she didn't finish university. Like, she was, like, too poor. And, like, I'm a journalist, and I went here. And, like, I sip lattes in New York or something. and like being like, she can't, who is she? You know, BLM, the kind of dressing down of like, well, she's just not black anymore if she's not going to vote this way. And I just really don't appreciate being told what I am or what I am not going to do, or that I'm going to fail. And so every challenge is a blessing in disguise. Every lie told about me I view now as a blessing in disguise. And I promise you, even in the hardest moments that I'm going through, without even knowing where it's going to end, I always take time to stop and thank God, because he's the ultimate mathematician and he knows that I need that challenge before me. So see every challenge as a blessing, and genuinely love your haters. They are your biggest fans.
All right. Hi, Candace. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I actually came from Stanford. I'm your biggest supporter. Me and my friends are like your biggest supporters.
From the 203.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. I just really wanted to ask you, how do you deal with the constant slandering of your name, especially in the beginning? Because right now, I'm going through this phase where people are attacking me because of maybe my beliefs or my values. And like, I literally was accused of like not liking black people. Like, and I'm like, how do I not like black people? Like, you know, it's just like, you know, and I just don't know how to handle it. I got really emotional.
Yeah.
And I want to know how you like stay away from being emotional and just really like get yourself through it.
Because you have to appreciate stupidity. You do. You know, if you're arguing with an idiot, you become one. And I've kind of employed that now, where I'm just like, you're a black white supremacist. Am I going to get big mad at something that stupid? You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, yeah, I totally want to help usher in a society that I can't live in. Like, I just want my kids to just be like, oh, you can't do anything because I'm ushering in a society where mixed kids can't live. It's a nonsense. And they resort to these attacks when there's nothing. Right? If there was something meaningful to attack you with, they would say that thing. But instead they're like, oh, like she said Christ is king, right? So it's like the attacks get more and more ridiculous, and after each one you get tougher and tougher, and your skin gets a lot thicker. And I think that that's what's happened over time is I laugh at it, at the nonsense of it all. And again, like the perspective that I just said is I know that God only puts challenges before you that he knows that you need to go through, because there's something bigger on the other end of it. So take time to thank God. All right, guys, I have 2 minutes left according to this clock.
This is the last question.
Okay, last question. Hi.
Hi. It's so cool seeing you in person. I'm such a huge fan.
You're very sweet.
So my question is, after being let go from the Daily Wire and being able to speak firsthand, do you think that the Daily Wire is complicit in censorship of certain people/topics similar to that of left-wing institutions?
I cannot talk about that. Thanks, everyone.